Strick City, woo! Strick City, all over the world.
Strick City, man, we live. Yo, Strick City on the ride. Yo, look like surprise. Yo, taking your city like we live. Yo, man, we live. Yo, taking your city like surprise. Yo, on the ride. Yo, Strick City coming live. Yo.
All right, that's enough of the intros today. That's enough of the intros. I have to get right to it. Hey, it's your boy Strick, man. Thank y'all for joining us tonight. I don't care where you are, whether you're on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook. I want to tell you thank you for checking us out tonight. I have a great show for you lined up, great guests, and I'm so excited about it, but I can't get started until you do something for me. You got to share this. I've already shared it. Now it's your turn. Share it with everybody you know. Let them know that Strick City is on, and you don't want to miss an opportunity to hear from this Grammy Award winner that I have on the show today. I'm telling you, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We're going to talk about some music. We're going to talk about content creations. Like, I'm really calling out all of the people that are content creators, whether that's music, whether that's writing, whether that's online videos and streaming. Guess what? I want to know who you are, and I want you to join the conversation with us tonight, because it's going to be really cool. I got a very unique young man with me tonight, all right? We got some things in common and some things that are very much so different, and we're going to talk about it. So without further ado, I'm sure you shared it. You guys are coming back. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know you're here. But I had to call him up just for the sake of time. Man, I can't wait for this conversation. So we met probably 2.5 weeks ago with a community called Let's Get Live. So big shouts out to the leader of that, my man Doc Rock. You know what I'm saying? He put together this Facebook group, and he's leading the charge. And I met some wonderful people through it. So Lemuel, Alicio, Diana, man, just some great people. And Keith was one of those folks. And of course, I can't forget about Anthony and Kirk and all those guys. And I'm have an opportunity just to talk to Keith about his past and what he's doing right now. And this is going to be bananas. So without further ado, none other than Keith Pelzer. Man, how you doing today, brother? Did I get you? Oh, man, what is that?
I'm doing.
What is that, man? You had to put the cartoon
What's
picture
going
up.
on, man?
What's up,
Listen,
brother?
I was trying to hurry up and get it in and out the way. My fault, man. What's happening, bro?
It's all
What's
good,
happening,
man. I'm glad, you know what I'm saying, I can have you on tonight. This is going to be really cool for us to kind of kick it. We've been talking, but not on my show, and I want to have an opportunity to kind of get you on so everybody that I know now know you even more. So people may know of you, but tonight we're going to have some conversation and kind of get right down to it. So I guess a lot of your initial claim to fame in the music industry, or in the industry period, comes from your songwriting and producing. Can you start talking about your past and what you did as far as songwriting, producing, some of the people you worked with?
Yes. Well, songwriting, producing, being a Philly-born songwriter, producer, I come from that whole Philly music era. And basically, the easy way to say it is, I'm a pew baby. So what that means for people that don't know, I'm a pew baby. I'm a third-generation pastor. And so I grew up in church. And so when you grow up in a Black Baptist church, you kind of know music. It's kind of easy.
Right.
You learn, and then, you know, being educated, you learn how to read music, but then you know how to play it by ear when you got the old deacon. So that whole experience and knowing music, hearing songs, hearing old hymns, seeing them in the book, hearing how people freestyle it, how they tweak it their own way, that kind of just opened a big door up to musical ear and sound. Then when you have a family full of uncles on my mom's side, and then aunts that are preachers' kids on the other side, you kind of got the best of both worlds, where you kind of got the family reunions and the Thanksgiving dinners with church songs upstairs with dad, who's the deacon, and the uncles who the pastor, deacon, whatever. And then downstairs, you got the uncles and some Millers, Michael Jackson, Sugar Hill Gang going on. You merge all that together, it kind of gets you open for stories. Then when you experience the love life, and those days of Out on a Limb and a few other songs, you have poetry in your heart.
Right.
And so you take all your talent, you take opportunity, they come together, and you say, hey, I want to be the guy on the radio. I want a record. I want to express myself. And it ends up happening. That's the short of it.
Now you say that's the short of it. So what was like your first big opportunity when it comes to music or working with people, producing or writing songs? What was the first thing that you ever done?
Wow. First thing, that's kind of hard to say because it almost is like crazy on how far back you go. I still would have to say church would be the first thing. The reason why I say that, I've never said this in an interview before, and it must be your anointing, DJ. Like, no, listen.
I have the anointing, right?
Yeah. It's funny. I've never said this, and that prayer before this might have just provoked this out of me.
Come on now.
I'll never forget. So my name is Keith, and I was a fan of Keith Pringle. Okay, Keith Pringle. And Keith Pringle, I used to sing some of his songs in church. And because I was talented as a musician, I would grab the mic and sing. And it was funny because all the church brothers, when you sing in church, they go, that's it, baby. That's really the first time that most people really feel like I got a shot at this and I can do something.
Right.
Because those were your first fans. You could be the wackest singer in church. I hate to say whack, but you could be the horriblest singer in church. But if they felt you, they edged you on and said, sing, baby. Then when you go out to sing, you have a song that's your song. And it don't matter who the artist is. When you sing that song, nobody sings it better than you. Right. So for that reason, you have this feeling of like, that's my biggest thing. And I'm going to cut across the field. I'm a preacher, so I'm going to cut across the field and get to your point for industry. But I have to acknowledge that was it. I was the best musician in my church and in Philadelphia at a certain point. Every musician had that, you're the best guy. Gotcha. Nobody plays the Hammond better than you. Until you discover that your cousin, shout him out, Tremaine Dunlap, is actually a better organist than you, who was the bass player, who was a drummer. And then you realize my other homie is really doing it. And then you start to segue into finding out what your purpose is for you. But that part of the long way of answering your question, that was one of those places where I've never said it in an interview before, but that was the first step of success. Playing and singing in church. Those anniversaries when the pastor gives you a solo and the whole church realizes that you're great. When you go out to another church and play and they realize, dang, this kid's got talent. He can sing.
Right.
Now let's get to you growing up and let's get to Real Stuff record. My first big record was actually with a reggae artist named Donovan, and his name was Amazon, as that's what his name was, Amazon. He's a real estate agent now, actually entrepreneur. But we were in Temple together, in Temple University, and I was doing some production, and that record came out, and it was a party record in Philly at a spot called the Ritz, and so that was my first major label recorded record. Right. The other thing, let's go back to church. Shout out to my boy, Pastor Kevin Akins, and the Akins family, my boy Carlton. They were the other Boys to Men in a sense, without comparing them. They were the church boys that Boys to Men and everybody knew about, and everybody in the industry knew about them. And so I had an opportunity with Kevin, and we put out a gospel record. It was a song that he wrote. I produced it with him. I did the music, but he actually played it first. That was my first production, but that was on gospel radio. So to answer your question, it was Kevin Akins with gospel, which was kind of like, that's a Philly thing. But the first major thing where I was in New York and they knew me up there was with a song called Jump Around and Shout. And that was on an artist called Amazon.
That's what's up. So so Doc has hit me up, and he's in the comments today. Big shouts out to my dude, Doc Rock. Love you, dude. Love for what you're doing. He wants me to ask you about this Washington football team. You know what I'm saying? That's what he wants to know.
Seriously, Doc. Him and Tina, listen, it's funny that I met Doc, and I would love for you. It's your show, and I would love for you to tell the people that know me that's watching how you and I just met. I love you, your wife, your family. I'm a fan of yours. I'm a fan of your wife's record. She will be on my playlist in the car.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, listen, I'm playing it. I'm playing it. Like, bottom line, and everybody needs to get a record, so you got to throw the plug in there for your wife. It's wonderful. The way she plays the flute on there and the sound of it, the arrangement, phenomenal. But the thing is, with this Washington Redskins, we were just talking about how I was watching the game last night with some people, and I said, it would really be amazing if these jokers beat the 11-0 team. Out of all the people, the no-name team is going to beat them. And I'm going to just tell you, it's going to be in my sermon on Sunday. Wow. I'm going to be sitting right in this chair, and some kind of way I'm going to work in how somebody with no name beat somebody with the name. Wow. Goodness gracious. And so
that's good stuff. You can preach that, right?
Oh, man, I preach stuff like, you know how they say, whatever it is I think I see becomes a Tootsie Roll to me.
Okay.
That's the way I preach. It's like, oh, I'm a preach a swell bottle if you let me.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm gonna tell you how to keep the temperature for more than 6 hours. I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell it. Okay? I'm gonna tell it.
Man, Doc, that's man. Hey, James is like, man, don't sneaker preach right now.
Look, yeah, SAP. Listen, we on DJ Strick show, and I'm gonna do what DJ Strick said. Listen, y'all, he's a bishop. You in my bishop category so far.
Oh, that's what's up, man. That's what's up. I appreciate you saying that. Listen, I have you on because, you know, of course, I'm gonna get all of the Let's Get Live crew guys on, man. I think everybody is just phenomenal. I've met some guys that I'm like, oh my goodness, they're doing this, they're doing that. But from a musical standpoint, you know, my show is kind of centered around a lot about music and entertainment, and you kind of fit the bill for all of that. And you're a pastor. Like, I'm like, this dude is like, he's hitting all of the hot buttons to be on Strick City Live. So I definitely want you to want us to kind of talk about some of the things. Now, you said your first joint that you did kind of like from a secular standpoint was a reggae joint. How did you progress to, you know, finding a young artist like Jill Scott, like this Philly sound? And I know Philadelphia, you guys were probably really close. I mean, did it all come out of the church? And if she was a church girl, can you kind of explain how that all happened?
This is crazy. So I met Jazzy Jeff in the 8th Street Music Store. And so down in the 8th Street Music Store, you know, I met this guy. He's got a dope chain on, whatever. I didn't know who he was because I'm such a church boy. I don't be knowing who's who. Like, you could have a celebrity walk right up on me, and I'm just kind of like, oh, I didn't know that was them. But long story short, I was in there playing church songs on the keyboard because that's what Philly musicians would do. We go to the music store, you find a keyboard or instrument, whatever you play. You sit down on it, you kind of do a shed, messing with the equipment. People see you, you kind of shed a little bit. Well, he came in the store and saw me and was just like, yo, man, you know, you should come down to the studio, yada, yada, yada. And I got his number and everything. And when I told a few people, I met this guy named Jay, and he was like, you talking about Jazzy Jeff? I'm like, oh, that's who that was? They was like, man, you better go down to the studio. But shout out to my boy, John Roberts, who's one of the world's greatest drummers. And then also, let me just shout out my, I can't even start.
Come on, you're going to start. And even with John Roberts, nobody calls him John Roberts. What are you doing?
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, everybody calls him Little John, right?
Oh, yeah, Little John. So John Roberts, John Roberts and James Poyser kind of glued me in with Jazzy Jeff. That was kind of like the glue. And then shout out to my boy Vidal Davis. We were kind of like church boys that just ran around playing for choirs and stuff. Tony Moore, Zach Williams, all the Philly guys. We would just run around. And so a lot of the church musicians were sought out, just like they are with artists on the road. When these bands go out, most of them is nothing but church cats that go out on the road. So I was kind of like the church guy that could play, but I wasn't as good as everybody else. And I was such a homebody with the church and being a PK and at my church, I didn't really look to get out and travel. So I still needed an outlet. The outlet happened to be being able to know how to be a producer. And what that was, and everybody needs to hear this, sometimes the easiest way in the production for a church kid is when you direct and lead the choir. When you have to have a senior choir, youth choir, children's choir, all of that, you got to present them as best as you can. You're already doing production. When you got to deal with people's attitudes, you got to do soprano, alto, tenor, you got to navigate the band and stuff. That is kind of a Quincy Jones-ish type thing.
Keith, you can do all of that?
Listen, man, I used to, the 3-part harmonies and all of that, talk about arrange them, get them together, pull the choir together, make sure the drummer's on beat. Do we need a bass over here? You know, that whole 9. Who's going to sing the song? Even when people get mad with you, like, baby, that's not your note right there. That right there, it will work out for the good of them. You know, the race is not given to the swift. Like, that's not your riffing thing. So you got to know production-wise, you're not going to pull that off. And so that's a skill set that comes from being a church kid, you know?
Right.
A skill set. And so, but back to your thing with John, James, and all, that got me in the face of like a Jazzy Jeff. And then I was a Teddy Riley fan. I was a hardcore.
Come on,
Teddy
weren't we
Riley.
all? Like, who wasn't a
Man.
Teddy Riley fan? Come on.
But here's what I heard. I heard the church boy in him.
Okay, I get
Like,
you. I didn't hear the church boy. I heard the party boy in him.
Listen, the New Jack Swing was church stuff because all his bridges was like, you know, like all his changes and stuff was like church stuff. It was the
Gotcha.
vamp to choir songs.
Right. I get it. And that's probably why people unknowingly liked it so much, because it was a familiar sound.
Yeah.
Done in a different way, but still kind of familiar.
Yes. That New York cop, I heard the church in there and I was like, I can do that. I'm like, I can do that. And so I ended up getting to that space where my parents allowed me to stretch out a little bit. They were just like, know where your foot's supposed to be at.
Gotcha.
Know where your solid ground is so that you stay in the path and you don't veer off the path far. But they gave me that space where other people around me didn't have that space. So in that space, I was rolling in that space. And the more I was rolling in it, doors started to open up. But I never stopped my place of serve. That's the main key.
Gotcha.
I never stopped it. Never.
So you met Jazzy Jeff. You're rocking with Jazzy Jeff. You know John Roberts, Lil Jon. You're in y'all in this whole little circle, and then one day y'all meet this vocalist that wants to do an album.
So let me get to you for Jill Scott. So John and James Poyser, he's out on the road with CeCe Peniston. They can tell their stories better than me. I don't want to jack it up. But my recollection of it is their musicianship and their artistry within themselves was so great. They were the first, like, out the limo. There was another guy named Craig King. That's the bomb. But they were the first out the limo of our crew. So James is out on the road. John is playing front Vogue, everybody. John's the man, you know. Then Brian Moore, everybody's out. So those of us who are left, it's me and Vidal Davis, and we meet a guy named Carvin Higgins. Carvin Higgins, phenomenal writer, Music Soul Child, Jaheim, you name it. It's like he's actually the pen behind Music Soul Child. Period. Wow. That guy, he's the pen behind Music Soul Child. That whole first album, definitely, and many more. But we met Carvin. Me and Vidal met Carvin. Vidal was a drummer as well, but we were the producer, like, starter crew for A Touch of Jazz. So Jazzy Jeff had A Touch of Jazz before he met us, and the 6 guys known as Keith Pelzer, Darren Henson, Vidal Davis, Andre Harris, who did Butterflies for Michael Jackson. And he did actually the rival best song on Jill's first album of ballads. Mine is He Loves Me, but Andre's is one of my favorite, and it's Is It the Way. But you got him, and and you got a guy who we've been partners for years, Darren Henson. And so there were 6 of us. So we end up all 6. It comes down to 6 of us. It was like 12 of us. Then it comes down to 6. But we were doing stuff with a girl from Philly named Tia. She has different last names, but Tia. All right, our girl Tia, another church girl. And so, Sean Doc got it right. Limitless, Darren Limitless Henson. And so Tia was actually like our first artist. And then we were working with Ryan Toby, Ryan Toby is the guy from Sister Act Part 2, who sang Oh Happy Day. He wrote for Usher and so many different people, phenomenal artists. We had a whole album on him, whole album on Tia. Another guy, Valvin Roan, that was one of the other first breakouts. He had a whole deal with Electra Records. We were cutting with Kenny Lattimore as well, doing some of that stuff. But what happened was Jill Scott was a friend of the girl who was dating Jazzy Jeff at the time. And so she's down at the studio, and we're cutting with all these major artists. Like, people come down to the studio and we like, oh man, so-and-so coming down. We got different people coming down. And Jill's hanging around us. She's a sister. She's just like the sister with us at the studio. So she's hanging around the studio. And Jazzy Jeff did tell us, y'all need to cut something with Jill. We never really were cutting anything. And this girl's around like every day. She's keeping stuff clean, keeping us out of trouble, making food. We chilling, hanging, we busting each other. And then one day, my boy Vidal Davis took her in a room and cut. I think it was Long Walk he cut. Again, my disclaimer, if I got it off, I apologize. Sometimes I get it jacked up. But he cut basically the first song with her. And I think it was Long Walk.
Gotcha.
He cut Long Walk, and everybody was like, oh, snap. She kind of dope. Then after a while, we just had a vibe where everybody just started cutting because we were studio rats.
Gotcha.
We lived in the studio. I was studio, wash up, go to church, back to the studio, go to work, go to the studio, wash up, go to church. That was it. That was my cycle. And so what happened was after he cut, everybody was like, yeah, we all going to cut. When we ain't cutting with a major artist, we're going to get Jill in the room. Then when we saw what she could do, the naturalness in her voice, the relationship that we had, that just started blowing up. And before you knew it, our system was we would just cut and make albums. We made 3 albums, and our manager went to LA, and every record company said, y'all stuff sucks.
Wow. Are you for real?
Oh, no, real talk.
Wow.
You couldn't tell us. Lisa Blue Jefferson, I think she goes by the name of, she was another artist. I cut one of my first songs with Jazzy Jeff at his crib on Pier 1 or Pier 7, and we cut a song called Good Day. We cut that. Vidal cut a song called, they call it Milk and Shoes. It was an emotional song, and this girl Lisa never came out as an artist with us. So
Gotcha.
Before Jill, we had Tia, we had Lisa, we had Ryan Toby, Eric Roberson, we was cutting with him, different people. But Jill is the one that took off because we cut that, and the name of the album, Words and Sounds. That's the plaque on the wall right there.
Okay.
Yeah. Words and Sound, man. That
hey, Keith, with the bokeh and that great camera you got, it's all out of focus back there. But I see the frame in the back. In the back. That's what's up, man. So Words and Sounds is the name of that album. And at that point, you guys are off to the races.
Yeah.
So, but am I right in saying like Jill was the first that got you out, but you actually won a Grammy with another artist?
No, with her.
So there's a Grammy on that song. Okay.
So that one came, Darren Henson and I, we cut a song called Cross My Mind. And the experience of that was wonderful. Again, if she wasn't busy and I could call her and get her on now, Jill would tell it, and she has no problem. I listened to one of her podcasts. She was on with Amir Thompson from The Roots, and I'm listening at her and him talk about something that happened in the past, and she was like, you got a total different memory of that than I do. And he was like, but that's what happened. And they're arguing because it's like, we all don't, because we didn't have video cameras at rolling like cell phones. Right. Some stuff everybody's forgetting how it happened. And there are certain things that we remember specifically. But with Jill, we cut this song in the wintertime. And it's 3 chords I sat there and played. Darren Henson and I were in the studio with Jill. And we were just talking because that's how we came up with records. Like it would come from, you ready for this? I'm gonna do it. It would come from the convo. Okay.
Let me get it so I can see it. The convo.
I was just gonna do that. It would come from the convo.
I got you.
From the it would just come from the conversation. So
let me stop you right there, Keith. This is why I have Keith on the show today. You know what I'm saying?
Man.
We are real kindred spirits. You know what I'm saying? Like Keith is a guy, like once he finds out something, he's gonna find a uniqueness that he could bring to the table, and that's probably one of the things that make your music so good is you're gonna find a unique portion to say, hey, let me put my stamp on this. This is going to be different than what anybody else is doing. And I'm going to show you guys some stuff. So, because I really want to we're talking about you and your Grammy and how you got started with Jill. But more importantly, you guys back then are really doing the same thing we're doing now, which was creating content. Like we're really big on creating content, and I want to show you full screen. So when we look at content, now it's visual content, and I see you on the screen. I got you with your glasses and all the stuff that you have around you, you know, your backdrop, your microphone. Like you are very thoughtful of the uniqueness that you bring with your content, but now it's visuals. And dude, I love it. I love it, man. I love the fact that you're there with the new wave of what content is.
You know what? It's what's amazing is, and I'll say this in an easier way. Tom sees me with my cup up. Shout out to my boy Tom. He sees me with my cup. The thing is, it's the one thing that's consistent is learning to adjust. And what we knew then is we figured it out when it came along. Like, it's not that people are experts, but it's knowing what to do and what to amplify when the audience is there. So the amplification that we did was people wanted to feel music. And then words needed a story. So shout out to my boy Carvin Hagens, who the first album on Music Soul Child, music was just a kid walking around South Street, okay?
Wow.
Walking around South Street, and Carvin met him, and when he came in, we looked at him like, dude's an artist? Like, are you kidding me? Then it was like, when he started singing, we didn't really understand the guy's sound, because it was like, you know, when you work with a Kenny Lattimore, you understand what I'm saying? And the guy Val Verone that we had, compared to them, one of these artists, Jonathan McReynolds, sings a song. He says, comparison kills.
Gotcha.
So like, you know, somebody that don't know that you and I know each other, they may see you and then compare you to me or vice versa. And it's like, yo, comparison kills, because Strick is Strick and Keith is Keith. Right. And we're brothers and we complement one another, if anything, if I can help somebody, right?
Right.
So the thing is, the comparison, we had to pull this out of there and understand when you look at a Music Soul Child, we were like, what do you do with this guy? Carvin Hagens figured it out. He literally wrote his story because he's not the singer. And the complimentary part was, what can I do with a kid that doesn't have a story to tell yet? And so what ended up happening is he pushed his story through that voice. And Music Soul Child's voice gave the story that he had. And that was the success of that album. Then you take a Flowetry. Their plaque is above me.
Gotcha.
It's two girls from London. Who are y'all? Like, what do y'all do? Somebody raps, somebody sings, somebody does poetry, and somebody sings. So we're like, what do we do? Tell the people who you are. We're Flowetry. I'm the flowist, I'm the songstress. Let's do that first, and then we can say yes. We can have fun. We can do all the other songs if you tell people who you are. Jill, Darren Henson, mastermind of Jill's intro. JILLSCOTT. Who is Jill Scott was the question. That album sold off of a question. Who is she? Well, when we got to LA after being broke, nobody really knows us. They know us, but they don't know us. We're on Hollywood Boulevard and Sunset Boulevard, and we look up at a sign, and the sign says, who is Jill Scott? It says 2.5 million people already know.
Wow.
I never forget that moment, dude. It said 2.5 million people already know.
Wow.
That right there, that'll preach right there. Everybody just hashtag SAP, sneaker preach. That'll preach. who who is she? 2.5 million people already know. That was a blessing to know that. And she was up for a Grammy and she lost to Shelby Lynn. That was the most traumatizing moment because it was like Shelby Lynn, best new artist. She already had 3 albums out and she's old. Like,
I got
how
you.
does this work? But
Right.
it wasn't our time. And who would have known 5 years later, I would be in church and get a text message that, look, we won a Grammy. What? And it was just from a conversation. And Jill's song just running across my mind. That was it. Just running across my mind.
That's some good stuff, man. So as we move forward, and I know now you're a pastor. You're a pastor in the church. How did you make the transition to, being a producer and a songwriter to actually being a pastor?
You know what? How about this? Let me say this word, purpose. And that word is jumping out at me because if you understand your why, it opens up the window of fresh air to the what's next.
Right.
The why is not always answered, but you kind of know the unanswered thing. And that unanswered thing is a faith stance of knowing that. And I was glad I wasn't that preachy at the time. I didn't know what to preach because playing for a bunch of Black Baptist preachers, you hear them tune. I started to become the guy that was like, yo, dude, every one of y'all, and I'm not knocking preachers, but I would hear the close and I would see people get excited off of the but early
right,
and I'm just like, I like it. I'm not knocking it. I don't do it like that, but I can, but I don't. I'm cool with that. It's not that. It's just I'm not feeling it when people aren't getting a message before that.
I understand.
So for me, it didn't really shift anything because I spent more time doing some of my biggest sermons before my calling. Gotcha. If you will. So it's like God had me in a place, in an environment that was not, I was more so, and my ministry now is the Nicodemus woman at the well environment.
Okay. That
has always been it because people knew I was a church kid. It's like, it's marijuana all in the room smoked out, and then everybody like, yo, you good? I'm good. And he like, well, like, who turns down free weed? It's like, right. What's up with him? And it's like, there's this moment that it's like, okay, maybe I could have walked out of the room, but I'm like, okay, I'm gonna complete the work. But being in the position sometimes causes people to ask the question when they find out certain things about you. And then you have the honest question of, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And you don't have to preach the whole book of John, the whole book of Mark. You don't have to preach the whole text to when Jesus died and got up in the book of Acts. You don't have to go into Corinthians and what's wrong with you and why you don't have to go into all of that. But with the relationship, people are going to ask the questions. And that made it easier for me so that when I did accept my calling, so hear this out. The Grammy was the year that I accepted my calling to preach with a publishing deal that I just got.
Wow.
Now, mind you, a publishing deal going to put the obligation on you to become another studio rat, to keep cutting songs, turn them in so you can pay that money back.
Right.
Well, there's a controversy there when it's just like, I'm at a family reunion, which was the weakest family reunion. I think my Aunt D might be watching, and she is. All of my aunts weren't there. All of the family wasn't there. We were in Long Island, New York. It was the family reunion everybody wasn't excited to go to. Gotcha. And I never forget, I interrupted my dad and my uncle before the sermon. I said, I got to say something. I got up off the keyboard, which is a little raggedy keyboard at the hotel, and I was like, God spoke to me. I'm accepting my call to preach. And everybody's like, whoa. My grandma just jumped up in the air, a couple of tears around the room. Thank you, Lords, whatever. We come back to the church. My dad stands in the pulpit and was like, I got an announcement to make. And everybody's like, whoa. But it was almost like, yeah, we kind of saw that coming. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
And so I maintained that whole character through it. And I was glad to know when. I talk a lot, but I do know when to shut up. You might think it's like, really? Some of my family on here like, whatever, dude. But those people that really know me, they know what I'm talking about. There is a quiet side to Keith where it's like after 18 sessions, you find out, dude's a pastor, he's a church guy, or this, that, and the third. It's because I care about souls. And so I've always been consistent like that. And to me, music is just an expression, if you will. I think a lot of church people, the reason why they have problems is because their mindset incarcerated.
Mindset incarcerated.
Yeah. So
break that down, Key. Come on.
In their minds, they're incarcerated because they believe that if I'm doing an R&B record, I'm sinful. Now, there's some people, I ain't knocking the whole these people, they believe it. They like, oh, do it unto the Lord, and I won't do this and I won't do that. It's like, now it's kind of like saying I'm a vegetarian or a vegan. I don't touch anything meat or something, but you get something from a factory where they say meat is made in this factory, but you only eat the vegetables. Well, you got a little twang of touching the unholy thing if you got a Pharisee scribe mindset.
Right.
Well, music is no different because the intent on which you're putting the song out for, you know exactly what you're saying. Here's my girl is Jill. Jill has not really said anything in her songs that church folk don't say.
Right. Right.
I'm going to just keep it 100. Now, you might dig in on a couple of lyrics and say, well, that right there, the mother of the church ain't going to say, okay, I got you. But the majority of the stuff, we can all relate to it. That's why when people at her concerts, they sing her words. They sing the words because they can relate. You think of Oprah, for example. Oprah is not the bishoptress. She's not the preacher. But you know how many people listen to Oprah, even during the time when she don't believe in Jesus Christ, but they still listen to her every day. They got her on TV because of the conversation. So when you know who you are, you won't be mind incarcerated to your abilities. And then you won't have to be in your now and look back when and say, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I didn't do it. Why? Because I was worried about what mama was going to say.
So let me ask you this question. You're calling that mind incarceration. Do you also think that it's really them being immature, like spiritually immature, not understanding a lot of what the word is? I mean, because you got the, Songs of Solomon, right?
Listen, Doc, you hit a big space there. And I look at it like this. When I see church folk with, and I don't have no problem with it, I see church folk with Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Fuji, whatever, Fendi. You got all these name brand stuff and shopping just like the world. We are in the world, but not of the world. That is a old saying. I know it's cheesy, but listen, I've been around preachers that's like, my dad was always a car person. Then I know pastors it's like, oh yeah, and they got a picture standing next to the car. Oh, look at my truck, look at my car, this, that, and the third. It's like, that's secular, dude. Like, it's in a sense, we could argue that to be vanity. Right. And, dude, I've been places to preach where I'm kind of like, the only reason I'm here is because of my music career, not because of my pastoring.
Wow.
You understand what I'm saying? Because I can't hoop like y'all. I don't have the credentials y'all have. But because you can say Will Smith, Jill Scott, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Music Soul Child, Floetry, Patti LaBelle. When you can say all that, it's like, okay, I'm going to bring him up here based off of that.
Based off his name.
Based off of the name. So what I like to say to people is sometimes talk to God yourself and the Holy Spirit will let you know if you're in the wrong place. So when it was time to back off, and I believe this principle, seek first the kingdom. When you seek first the kingdom without, like you said, the immaturity, then you have yourself open for the places that you can go, that you don't go because you worried about in your immaturity what they gonna say.
Wow.
And so for me, I really wasn't, I wasn't worried about what they gonna say because here's the thing. I was always committed to knowing if I don't have to be stuck in LA, literally, I had record companies fly me home just to play at church on Sunday. Wow. And then change my clothes, wash them, and then come back out to LA for the Monday session. I've done stuff like that because I was just like, I believe that my success was in my serving. And when I believe my success is in my serving, then that puts me in a place of significance. That's my main word. So when you look at significance, then you understand your serve. When you understand your serve, you can expect success to come from your serve because you're focused on your significance. And what's my significance? The maturity was, I don't know yet what it is that God has in store for me, because his ways are above my ways. His thoughts are above my thoughts. And so therefore, I do what I know I need to do now, and then when I have the opportunity. So God allowed me to meet Jazzy Jeff in the store for a reason. He positioned John Roberts to be in the place he was in to allow me the opportunity that when I'm taking John up to the studio with his drums, I'm like, hey, I got a DAT tape. And then Jeff was like, man, that's fat. So I figured out engineering. I figured out how to make sounds go. Because I'm always on a picture, I studied a book that showed how to do a mix and where to place the drum kit, where to put the hi-hat and different things. And that gave me the opportunity to go to the next space, But the opportunities weren't really opening up in church. They were opening up in the world. That's a bad word for some church people. But when you look at the principle of the gospel, there's an outward reach.
Right.
One of my uncles in the ministry, Pastor Paul Lee, would say the church is actually more productive scattered than gathered.
Wow.
So yeah,
listen,
go ahead.
Listen, I knew that when we turned on the microphones that we were going to have a major conversation. This has been some really good stuff, man. We can't fit all of the content in the time that I have tonight, man.
Right.
I hate to say this, but I have to have you back. Like, we got to do a part 2.
Then you take over, man. Because people that's watching that Adobe out here.
Keith, listen to me. I have people that I'm associated with that's going to see this or probably on right now that are in that position that need to hear what you have to say. That are having that issue. I mean, come on, you've already said it. Most of the musicians that were traveling with these artists are church kids.
Hey, wait, let me say something, DJ, because I don't know if he's watching, but if he watches later, I'll tag him. So my cousin Aisha, her husband, and I call him my cousin, his name is Daryl. His name is Daryl, right? So Daryl actually played for Pharrell for darn near over 15 years, I would say. The crazy thing is, I met the Neptunes before they got big. They were just skateboarding type dudes that were around Serban Genya, right? And so I'm down at the studio in Virginia, and I meet these guys. They came up to Philly. I'm like, cool. And then this years later, my cousin Aisha meets, Daryl, and they get married and this, that, and third. And what happens is, him and I think it's Boots Green, they end up playing for him for years. This dude hangs with him. Like, that's his homie. Shout out to Man, who's like John Legend's right-hand man. These are Philly guys that I'm connected with that they look at me like, oh, Keith's the man. I'm like, no, y'all the man. But Here's the thing. Those boys have most of the Philly guys I know, they have a at-home serve. My nephew, Trey, Dr. Sandra Williams' son, this kid has been out, Spanky. Shout out to Spank too, Spank and Trey. They've been out on the road with so many people, okay, world-renowned people, but they have a serve. You can go to Spank's sister's church and find him there. He's reachable. You can find Trey right there with his mom. They are reachable. James Poyser, who's on the TV every night with the Roots, you would find him at his daddy's church, okay?
Wow.
Singing in their native tongue. You will find James in church. There has to be a serve first before any kind of success,
man.
Especially the last. It's the old principle of seek first the kingdom. I'm gonna just slap something that everybody know, and I ain't dropping no super jewels. Seek first the kingdom of God, and my way of saying it, the Keith Pelzer version of it is, and all these things will be added unto you. Here's the thing, and I'm gonna make a profound statement. Those things on the wall are added to who God already purposed me to be. That's what I'm gonna say. I got more plaques over there. Those things, I'm not belittling it in words, but those things are the added to the who God already called me to be. Jeremiah says he squeezed you into your mother's womb. So if he squeezed you in, The things that are busting out of you, if a Grammy busts out of you, something's bigger. If success bumps out of you, is something bigger. Because if God squeezes it in there, there's a lot to come out that you have no clue what it is. And the last thing is dynamite. If you throw it in the middle of the room, the dynamite itself might be this big, but when you throw that dynamite in the room, the explosion will be bigger than the area that you're in. That's what I got to say about success.
Keith, you got to come back to the show, man. Cause we hadn't even got through half the stuff we need to talk about, man. I gotta have you back, and I know like it didn't take us but minutes. Because there's such a kindred spirit there. Like there's we have the same foundation. We love God. Mm-hmm. We love God, and right now we absolutely love to create content. And I think people hear the message that you talked. I mean, you just dropped so many nuggets tonight, man. You dropped so many nuggets.
One other piece on that, Rodney Harris is in the column watching, and he's an OG and looks like a young boy. He looks younger than me, and he's my big brother.
Wow.
Rodney, I interviewed him on my show. Out of all this time knowing him, he was you remember the song Sunshine Anderson, Heard It All Before, right? That song, Brandy, Full Moon album. It's a guy named Mike City. Mike City is a musician from Philly, from a storefront church on Broad and Butler.
Wow.
And Rodney Harris literally raised him. His name is Michael Flowers, actually, hint, hint. But people know him as Mike City. This kid, right? Me and him were like musicians, like battling bass player guys. And one day I'm in LA after all the Jill Scott success, and they were like, yo, Mike City's in the other room. You want to meet him? It's like, yeah, I want to meet him. And then we walk around the hall when we seen each other in the hallway. It's like, this guy, we like, oh, this is my man from Philly. And it was amazing because another thing, he's a PK that was serving and the doors open for him.
Wow.
The doors open. But Rodney, this dude, I just know him from a group, the Gospel Blenders. He's big brother. But Rodney done sang with so many people, but yet he never left his foot out of church though.
Wow.
And so sometimes, see, if you know how to go into a world space and stop doing comparisons and just do it for what it is, you won't block yourself. So your word, I'm gonna use it, the immaturity. Yeah, this guy has been out on the road with countless artists and have ministered to people outside of church, again, scattered and gathered.
Wow.
And so that's just, yeah, man.
Hey, yeah. Keith Pelzer, listen, dude, I can't say enough about how I knew this was going to be a powerful show. Like, you have really, really taught me a lot and have helped a lot of people tonight. And we got to do a part two. We got to do part two when I get off. I'll schedule it with you so I can have you come back, because you just have such a wealth of information for people because of what you're going through and what you're doing right now. Like we didn't even talk about what's going on right now, and I want to talk about that because it's going to help even more people about what's happening now when we're talking about content creation. The recap show is about to happen on Let's Get Live. I want to be sure that we help people that direction. Diana, thanks for checking us out. My man PJ, thanks for checking us out. James, thanks for coming through. Doc, thanks for coming through tonight. And I know on your watch party, you had tons of people watching too. So Limwell was over there. Thanks for everybody checking us out tonight.
Oh yeah, you couldn't see them, could you?
I couldn't see their comments, but I had my phone going. So
what did Limwell say about you? Limwell said that you are sight non playing.
He said it was incredible tonight. That's what he said. Keith, hold what you got, Keith, just for 1 second here. Like, this has been an absolutely phenomenal Strick City Live. My man Keith Pelzer, Grammy Award winner and preacher, pastor. I gotta have him back. Like, oh my God. Let's see how soon I can make this happen for a part two. I got more stuff coming up tonight. Like, just hang out at Strick City. We're going to do a recap for the Let's Get Live crew. Vlogmas 2020 is going on, and day number 7. I haven't put mine in for the day. Wow. Like, or did I? I don't remember. I got to put mine in for the day. I think today's number 7 or 8. I'm going to have it done for sure before the day's over with. Thank y'all for watching. And, man, what a great show. I would not have it. I did expect it, but I didn't know. Thank y'all for watching.